part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Chase Smith Podcast, a conversation on current events and culture. We are proudly part of the Press Play Podcast Network, empowering diverse voices to launch professional, engaging podcasts. With me today is Rebecca Alter. She covers entertainment, TV, and comedy at Vulture. And we're going to talk all about Saturday Night Live. Rebecca, thank you for joining the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Hello.
So SNL comes back on October 1st with Miles Teller and Kendrick Lamar. Rebecca, are you excited? How are you feeling about the premiere?
I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I'm like low-key so not excited.
Oh, no. Okay, no, this is good. This isn't what are you not excited about? Just the show in general, the guests, where are you at?
I think Miles and Kendrick, like the guests are excited. Like literally my dad texted me like, "Oh, Brendan Gleeson's going to be guesting." And I was like, "Yeah, like really a thespian."
Yeah.
But I think I've been experiencing SNL burnout over the last few years. I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment. So I'm always just like not even cautiously optimistic anymore. I'm just like guardedly neutral with each coming season. And like, I'm always so satisfied if there's like one good sketch in a week. Like if there's one that I could take away from it. And like, I feel like a third of the time it's something that was cut for time and just posted on YouTube after. But if there's like one thing I could take away every week that was like funny and worthwhile, then like, that's a really good batting average.
Yeah. I feel like the rhythm we found ourselves in was, a couple bits from Update, right? Maybe something from the monologue, and then like a random sketch. I felt like was kind of like almost what they seem to push too, which was really interesting. I'm really excited. I love SNL. I think SNL is really important for what they do and how they turn it around. But seasons like this, Rebecca, is what gets me excited, where you have new talent, where no one knows what's going to happen, where you have just all of this new energy, and the show has to reinvent itself once again. Season 48, Rebecca, you talk about SNL burnout. I mean, people have been experiencing SNL burnout for 4 decades now. And the show just keeps on going. And the newness of what we're going to experience, we're going to hit on that in just a few moments. That just gets me so excited just to see the show reinvent itself in a new direction, in a new voice. And I cannot wait. October 1st is when it starts streaming on Peacock live for the first time, which is also big. Like that's big time. Big time. You gonna watch it live?
I usually don't watch it live anymore. I feel like that was really that was my introduction to SNL in like late middle school and high school. And I like wasn't getting invited to parties necessarily. And that was like a perfect Saturday night activity for like me and whatever other nerds. And nowadays I usually catch up with it on YouTube after. And lately it's through the specter of like literally someone at work singling something out as particularly great, or like literally my dad telling me to watch something that I missed. But there was a period of time when I was doing like the weekend coverage of SNL for Vulture. So I wasn't doing the recaps, but I would do like breakout posts about my favorite sketches of the week. So I'd have to and I think I stopped doing that around like a year ago. And that's when I was last like really plugged into it. Yeah. But what you're saying about the turnover, like, definitely is true. And I think like they're trying to make NBC Universal is like trying to make Peacock desirable to people. And this is a great way to do it. I feel like it's like this, and they maybe have baseball. I don't know.
Yeah. Their programming strategy is really weird. They're canceling shows, as we talked about via Twitter, that you're like, man, should they have canceled that? Or like, why would they just let that ride? But we'll see how SNL kind of impacts their numbers. A lot of new, a very new cast with SNL here. I'm going to read off just a list of the departing cast members, because it's pretty alarming, Rebecca. Like it's pretty, like you read these names, you're like, Oh my gosh. Like who's going to be left? There's
No, they haven't had something like that in ages.
eight names, 7 of which were starring roles, like featured players that were the voice face of SNL. Here we go. In May, there was a group of 4 that left, which was Kate McKinnon, Adie Bryant, Kyle Mooney, and Pete Davidson. All, Kyle Mooney's pretty peculiar, but Kate McKinnon, movie star. She is just a stud. Adie Bryant, hilarious. Shrill was, my wife and I, we really, really loved Shrill. That was brilliant. Super duper funny. Pete Davidson, I don't know what more needs to be said about Pete Davidson, but that was the group in May. And then in September, Alex Moffat, Melissa Villaseñor, Aristotle Otari. Last year's his first year. And then just randomly, like last week, Chris Redd was like, hey, I'm also out. 8 names that were huge parts of SNL are now gone. I think the cast is going to feel that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like 7 huge names that were huge parts of SNL and Aristotle, who sadly had not enough time on the show. He had like one sketch that we all loved at Vulture that we were like, oh, this is a good breakout sketch. And that was all he had. And it's where he's like a weird musical act or something.
In like a hotel lobby or something.
Yeah.
It's just really, yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. It was like a character too. Yeah.
It was time for the it was so time for like say an 80 or like like someone like Pete at this point was distracting on the show because of what like the meta what Pete Davidson like means and is as a celebrity. It was like on the show, it just felt super. I try to think about like what would the equivalent of that have been in like the 80s or 90s when there were like a couple people who were like such breakouts beyond comedy at that point, just like huge celebrities on the show. That's what it like that felt like, because it's not often that these people are like A-listers in the like TMZ sense.
Yeah, I would probably say Eddie Murphy probably like in the late 80s. Probably tapped into that a little bit. Like that just kind of broke out of the SNL and got into like the zeitgeist of like everyone like knew of him.
Right. And also being like, I guess Eddie Murphy, it's similar because it's like also like a sex symbol, right? It's not like Adam Sandler also being A-list while he was on it, but like he was A-list like for being goofy, although he's certainly a sex symbol to many.
Now, I feel like he has this weird
he's really aged
now.
into it.
It's like, I want to wear XXX basketball shorts and like a XXX shirt and walk around looking all scruffy and
it's working.
Right. So super fascinating, which I think Pete Davidson probably has a lot to do with a lot of the new hires as well, Rebecca. SNL is bringing on 4 new cast members to replace the 8, which has me also very excited that it's not going to be a super large cast, at least as of now. But all of these new cast members all have stand-up background, very little sketch, but they all are comfortable behind a mic. Maybe not necessarily with character work, but they all stand-up background. Molly Kearney, the first openly non-binary member of Saturday Night Live. Hilarious stand-up bit on YouTube, very much in their delivery, a Chris Farley vibe. And it's a delight to watch. They're brilliant. They're brilliant.
I love that comparison, and that wouldn't have occurred to me, but I totally see it. I think they're going to be like, they seem super fun. And also, of the 4, they're the one who does the most kind of like, like little like sort of character work, short Instagram video stuff. So they kind of like come the closest for me of someone where I could like see them doing a character. Yep. They have these like funny ones that have truly maybe now they have views because like their name was in the news, but they have these videos of just being like an angry chef in a kitchen, and it feels very like a year ahead of The Bear doing The Bear. So I'm like, oh, they're tapped in.
And not so much Molly's delivery is so confident and so it is so funny. I can't wait to watch Molly on the show. And I not in their resemblance of Chris Farley, but in their delivery and their confidence. It's just funny. And I can't wait to see Molly on the show. It's going to be great. Devin Walker, which is another name, Rebecca, I want to throw out because Devin was named by Vulture as one of the comedians you should know in 2022. And the next thing you know, everyone's going to know of Devin Walker here in a couple of weeks because he's going to get a sweet name on a card on the SNL intro. And he's going to be there. He's going to have his thing on the 8H monologue stage because every new show, they always talk about the new people. And Devin's going to be up there. And you guys had him pegged. You guys got it.
This was a huge conversation with the people who make the Comedians You Should Know list because we always start working on it and basically choose our lineup before the new SNL hires are announced. Yeah. And then the hires get announced, but we don't publish it. In the past, we used to publish it in October, and then we would seem so like behind the times. Like last year, we had Please Don't Destroy on the list, and I wrote this whole, like, I'd done a profile of Please Don't Destroy.
Which the writers on the show, I don't know if people, like, Please Don't Destroy, they do digital shorts, they're writers on the show.
Yeah, they're like those 3 lanky boys who seem to have a digital short on every week where it's just like them in their little writing office.
With stars, though. Like, they get all the stars in on it, which is great.
Yeah, well, it's crazy because there's a huge writing staff and almost none of them, except for the ones who, like, do double duty or, like, are weekend update anchors. Like, very few of the writers, especially in their first year, have the, like, exposure they did. But they're an example of someone who we were so enthusiastic about all year and wanted them on the list. And then it's like the SNL announcements, like, eat our lunch. And then we feel like it's not really impressive to have them on the list after the fact of those announcements. It's like Comedians You Should Know. Well, obviously they're literally on SNL. Right. So we made sure we wanted this year to have it published out, all of that, before the announcements were posted. And then all week long leading up to the SNL announcements, it was like us hoping that a couple of our people made it. Like, it feels honestly like doing a fantasy draft, especially like I wrote the blurb for Devin Walker, and once we have our list, then we did, like, it was like a fantasy draft, like choosing who we wanted to, like, the ones we wanted to write about. So that was exciting, and he's really great. And he, again, he's an example of someone who I only know as a stand-up, except like short little, and this is like the thing now with everyone, like little sort of like front-facing camera videos he used to make with like Grace Kulenschmidt, who's a very funny online comedian. Where it was kind of not even characters, it was just like conversations, but that's the closest I've seen to like a sketch. But I'm very excited for him.
And the other 2 new cast members, Michael Longfellow and Marcelo Hernandez. Rebecca, why do you think they've leaned more towards stand-up comedians in these new cast members? Why do you think that trend is a thing?
Well, I think it's exactly what you pointed out earlier, which was like, I think like Pete leaving is like influencing some of who's joining, and like those 2 guys where it's like, oh, they're like young, cute stand-up boys, which is like that was the Pete model. Like, he was just an open mic New York comedy club guy. So I feel like that's what they're going. And I always find it interesting when it's a stand-up because you could see any number of their like clips, but you have to wonder what characters or impressions or whatever they brought into those auditions, because you have to like have those. Marcelo Hernandez obviously like seems to be pretty popular on TikTok. I know he also does stand up at like the Stand in New York and stuff. But that seems like an example of like trying to get the youth with a TikTok boy.
Marcelo's open for Jim Brewer and the late Gilbert Gottfried actually in stand up. So I think maybe a little more seasoned success maybe. But I honestly don't know much about any of these new cast members. I want to ask you this question. Do you think it's easier to teach a stand-up person how to do sketch than it is to teach someone who does sketch how to do update spots? Because that's all when Pete or Adam Sandler or any of these guys would go and update, they would just do their stand-up bits. It would just be like them doing stand-up. I wonder if they're not seeing that, hey, most of the things that trend, that go viral, that people share are update bits. And so let's just lean in that and then teach them how to do character work, sketch work, or worst case scenario is they laugh and break and then that goes viral anyway.
I think that's a pretty good analysis of why they might be going with these people. One example of like, I think a very successful, more stand-up-y person in the past few years is Sarah Sherman, because like Sarah Sherman, even though her stand-up stuff is pretty much in a character and in a persona, she's demonstrated that despite having such a specific stand-up voice that to me feels like such an acquired taste, she's been able to be like a really useful, like versatile, like sketch person, and she can like, she's so weird in real life in stand-up, and then for her to be able to like dial that down and like be a utility player in sketches and play like a girl in a classroom or the wife or whatever, you know, these like kind of thankless but like needed roles to flesh out a scene. Like the fact that she's able to do that, I think, is an example of how you could take a stand-up, especially one with a very idiosyncratic voice, and they could have their breakout update bits, which Sarah certainly has had, and then also be able to like figure things out in sketch. So I have to think that it's like doable, especially because like, I don't know, the show started as like a variety show, basically, right? That's like the inspiration of SNL, is this feeling of a variety show. Like the early seasons had like recurring Muppets segments or like, whatever.
Awful. It was like you fast forward to that junk when you're watching those old seasons. All right,
but I think that's like why you're able to necessarily like, even if they're not like a, you know, maybe they haven't like had 10 years of UCB like sketch training or whatever, but it could, not follow the like rules of whatever.
How many sketches or bits will go viral from Sarah and Molly together? Rebecca, would you put the over under at 3.5? Or
oh God, like, yeah, like I really hope so. Or like get, you know, Bowen in that mix too. Like I love whenever like there's also, it's always like it feels like a one for us, one for them. The past few years of taking sort of like these alt Brooklyn, or in the case of Molly, like Chicago to whatever, like, but these, you know, and I guess Sarah also used to be a Chicago person, but like taking the like the alt weirdos versus the more like traditional successful stand-up people, or you know, like, you know, it used to be like that hiring pipeline of like Second City to SNL, or like which I guess Second City could also incubate like some of the best, strongest sketch performers and like character work people. But I like that they also take a chance on these people who've just found really weird avenues. I like that there's been more of that.
What current cast members do you expect to be featured more this year? You mentioned Bowen Yang, who is just absolutely brilliant. I don't know if I've enjoyed every single thing he's done on the show, I think, since he's been on the show. Like there hasn't been one thing where I've been like, Bowen really missed it there. I didn't enjoy that. Everything he does hits, and it's incredible. You expect
he's kind of like, that's such a lightning in a bottle talent. That's like so, and that's like, I'm one of the people who like had been listening to Las Culturistas for years and following him, and it's all been very gratifying for like someone with that sensibility to do so well on the show. Because you think about people like someone like a genius like Jenny Slate, who has had like the most interesting, best career, but wasn't able to really like square things with SNL, or like Casey Wilson, like people who are amazing at what they do, and they just like SNL wasn't able to like find out what to do with them. I think there's been a more successful current the past few years of like letting these sort of like oddballs shine. Just and like
cook.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of who's going to be the breakout in that way of the existing cast. I'm just trying to like, I need to refresh myself with a list of who's even coming back.
Oh, I have some
Because a
things
third
that
of
we
the
could, I
cast is
think
gone.
Andrew Dismukes, I think was kind of coming on a little bit last year. Was able to get some stuff on, and his timing and delivery is, it's really well paced. And he did a sketch with Jared Carmichael, I think, when he hosted about these funeral people who were like working like at a funeral home, but they were with a family, but they like a body was thrown over like a cliff. It was just really like this random sketch that I just is like, oh, if this is the stuff that this guy can bring, then it's going to be great. Do you remember that sketch, or does that ring a bell?
I feel like this is so bad because like I love Gerard Carmichael and I feel like I missed that week. I don't know what it was I was doing, but now I'm definitely going to go back and watch. And I love Andrew. I think he's a cutie, which goes a long way. And he's great. I think I will say obviously James Austin Johnson is another example, like a Bowen or a Sarah, of like a new player who they immediately were like, okay, you're going to be like our Trump, you're going to be our Biden, you're going to like do it all. Like you're going to be the show host.
You're going to host all these shows. Yeah.
You're going to like, it's going to be like your first episode and you're going to be opening the whole season. Like he's just crazy. I love mostly from her appearances on Comedy Bang Bang. I'm obsessed with Ego Nwodum.
Yes.
I think she's one of the funniest people alive. And for a while on the show, it's like you wouldn't know it just from watching the show, because I feel like she didn't have enough opportunities to do that weird shit she did. And then getting to do the Dionne Warwick stuff has been like really big for her and fun. Yeah. So I hope she gets to keep doing stuff like that. And I think the vacuum of like Adie and Kate leaving opens up more space for Heidi Gardner.
Yeah, her, Chloe Feynman too. She's like the impressionist who can just like do any voice, which is great. But Ego, when I see Ego on screen, it's like this calming presence. Like, oh, okay, she's going to deliver. She's either going to, and I think that's why her Diane Warwick character has been so revelatory for her, is because she actually gets to like be that fish out of water or whatever that like extra ingredient is in the sketch. Because I felt like they gave her a lot of just like you just be the stable, constant, normal, and everyone else would be like the extreme around you. But with the Diane Warwick, she gets to be the extreme and the funny, and it is so great.
Yeah, she is on Comedy Bang Bang. She is a freak. Like so I think the more opportunities for her to be like the weirdest person, like it's like she's like a Kate McKinnon level, just total oddball with so many of her characters that she does on podcasts. So more opportunities for her would make me very happy to just be the weirdo.
And you mentioned Sarah Sherman. Are Sarah and Molly, are they friends? They know each other? Do you know if there's like a connection there?
I have to think they are, because they both come out of like a similar
I feel like I read that.
Chicago comedy world that's very like, all those like people are super supportive of each other and like go on each other's shows that they're hosting. And I'm also like totally talking out of turn because I literally have never spent more than 2 weeks of my life in Chicago, but I follow all these people because they're all really talented.
Yeah.
And whenever like what a great sort of like Chicago talent comes to Brooklyn to be on someone's show, like they'll be the best person on the lineup that night.
Yeah.
Almost always without fail.
Chicago's great. Let me tell you, Rebecca, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I have to ask a couple more questions here. SNL 48th season, which is absurd. 48th season. Is SNL still important, or is it just for people like us? Well, I guess like you that cover it for Vulture, or like me who just like love what it provides, because I think it's funny. I do, but the costumes, the set design, like the turnaround in a week, there's nothing like it on TV.
Yeah.
But at 48, is it still important? Does it still matter?
I think it's like, I think there have been, I think there's this tendency to think that like SNL only matters during like a time of like great political unrest or whatever, like an election year or like all through Trump, like when every week people had to be like, this is so vital. And it's like, I think what makes it important is that isn't necessarily the political commentary, because you're going to get like sharper political satire from, I don't know, smaller things that are allowed to be more specific and cutting or whatever. And I think what makes SNL relevant is the virtue of the fact that like things, is that it's the only one. And for people who don't even follow comedy, this will be like the one thing they do follow or do hear about often. So even if you're not, there's so many levels of, I think, fandom. There are people online, like I've definitely been like chewed out on Twitter by like SNL stans. Like there are people who stan it the way you would stan like Pretty Little Liars or like Vampire Diaries or something. There are people who really, and they make, you know, fan cams of their favorite like cast members and stuff. Like they stan it like it's BTS. Like, but so there's that level, but that's obviously the tiny minority. And those people are like making it a personality trait that they're like obsessed with everything about SNL and they know everything. But then like the wider culture is, this is the thing I could talk to my parents about on a Monday morning if we both watched it on the weekend.
Well, will you help me? Will you help diagnose me? Because I don't know where I stand in that. So I need some help. Okay.
Well, if you're not making like sexy fan cams of Kyle Mooney, you're definitely not on the far end of the fandom spectrum.
I'm going to give you my symptoms, Rebecca, if you give me the diagnosis and whether I stand or not. So SNL, we don't fast forward through the credits. We listen and watch the credits.
You like to watch the hugs.
Well, that's that's the credits, but also the intro music. We don't. Okay.
Those credits.
We watch the beginning credits, and we also do watch all the outro credits to the end. So we watch those credits. Also, Rebecca, we've been to a show, and we stayed on the street. We slept on the street. We got a standby ticket, and we actually made it on the show.
I need to hear more about this.
I would.
What was it?
Love to talk to you about this. This was in 2012. This was, I think, Kate McKinnon's first show on SNL. It was Josh Brolin and Gautier. Remember this? Someone that I used to know.
That is a real you just pinned this to such a specific moment in time.
But also, not only was it Kate McKinnon's, I think, first episode, it was the very first Californians that they ever did live.
Wow.
And let me tell you, no one laughed. No one knew what the freak was going on. It bombed in studio. Everyone is just like, I don't get it. Like no one drives in California or LA. Like none of this makes sense. And I was just like, that might've been the worst sketch of the night. And then a couple of days later, like everyone's loving it who wasn't at the show. But it was incredible. I don't want to hijack, is SNL so important? So we went up there just for like a vacation. It was before we had kids, and Friday afternoon after we toured 30 Rock, it's like 1:00. There was like 7-8 people in line already. And we just got in line and hung out. And from like Friday at 2, we were there until Saturday at 8 when they passed the tickets out. And as the night went on, the line kept getting longer and longer, wrapping around 30 Rock. At around 10:30, 11, Lorne Michaels brought everyone soup. Not him, but he had his like assistants and like the chefs out there bring everyone soup. We ordered pizza to be delivered on the street there. We got to see all the cast members leave. We got to see Jay Farrow, Bill Hader. Kristen Wiig came down when we went to use the bathroom, so we missed Kristen Wiig, unfortunately. But Bobby Moynihan, Fred Armisen, Abby Elliott, and we got standby tickets. So whenever you're standing and waiting in line, you have an option. You can get tickets for the pre-air show, like the dress rehearsal, or you can get a standby ticket to the live show. And you only get entered, and you only can go to the live show if not everyone shows up. And so that's why they're standby tickets. And so if they have empty seats, then hey, you can go in. And so even though we waited 20 hours outside, that doesn't mean we're guaranteed to go. And even if we have the ticket, it doesn't mean we get to go.
Right.
They're like, come back at 10 o'clock. Hopefully you get in. We're like, great. We come back at 10 and all of a sudden Al Franken's walking by, Cameron Diaz is walking by, Shaun White's walking by. I mean, it really is just incredible. And we were the last two, Rebecca, to get up the elevator. The last two to go in the live show. We went up the elevator with the guy who plays bass. He's like the
nice.
big, like, he's playing bass. He's always smiling. We were up the elevator with him, got a picture with him. But not only were we the last two to go in, but we got 2 seats by each other, which also, because they're like, we can't guarantee if you like where the seats are. We just know there are 2 open seats somewhere and you guys get to go. And so we sat down right as they wrapped up their before the show starts, like before like the 3-minute till countdown starts, they're doing like a pre-show before the show starts. Like all the cast members are doing like, whether it's an act, a dance, a stand up or something to get the crowd warmed up. And then they're like, hey, 3 minutes till showtime, and everything changes. And they set the cold open at the monologue. Like it's just, and then it just goes into action. It was incredible. It was awesome. But that was the story. So I don't know if I'm an SNL stan, but I know we don't fast forward through credits. We have been to a live show and we watch about every episode.
I think the waiting in that line like earns you whatever top tier fandom title. That is like, what an incredible time though. And yeah, you could totally see how like before it became recurring, what that Californian sketch would have played like, especially in New York where like, I don't know, freeway directions culture means nothing to us. I only live here because I grew up in another city, and so I can't really drive. I can only live in places with a subway. That sketch is nothing to me. It's hilarious, but I could see how that would fall.
But you also get like the soap opera element on TV because of like the crossfades and like the intro. Right. When you're watching in studio, there's like 2 TVs in front of the audience that show that stuff, but you're not watching the TV. You're there watching, oh, look at that set. Oh, they're ushering Bill Hader somewhere. And oh my gosh, Andy Samberg, like you're not watching that TV. So it was super disorienting. And like, why is the cast laughing? Like, what is so funny about this? But yeah, that was our live show. It was great.
You mentioned being a parent, and I'm curious, like, what are the sketches? I'm always curious about how comedy fans, or just, fans of whatever, impart stuff on their kids and when. Like, what sketches do you show a kid and when? Because I'm thinking about, like, I think when I was a kid, we had like a Best of Mike Myers on SNL DVD. It might have been a VHS that we would, when we were like really little, we were allowed to watch all the time because it was just goofy, right? Like it was just goofy. Like Dieter is just strange, or like I think like the Thanksgiving song that Adam Sandler did. I'm curious about what are like, I guess, the kid friendly things that you would want to show them that you think a kid would get, and at what age? Yeah,
we've talked about SNL, and there've been times where we've watched a couple sketches with our daughters in 2nd grade, and so I can't remember off
that's still really young.
The top of my head what that is. I remember the first time like I like legitimately like remember watching it because I had Adam Sandler's audio CDs like were super formative in my like comedy and like what I thought was funny. There was one evening I was really sick. And so my mom and I were just downstairs and I was like kind of laying down. And I remember just seeing this like title card, SNL season 25. Like they had like the 25 number in like the SNL logo. And I was just like, wait a second. And then Will Ferrell just like killed, just like crushed, and just like, this is amazing. And that's I think one of my first like memories of like legitimately being blown away at SNL, the institution. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not the best person to answer this. How old, when should, and my daughter and I just went and saw Jaws in 3D. And so I don't know.
So you're like, oh, I'm going to like give my daughter a lifelong phobia. Let's go.
It's so wild. We have the digital copy of Jaws, and on like Apple Movies, you just see all these like movie posters and you get to pick one to watch. And so Jaws is iconic with the shark going up with the person swimming. And for like 2 or 3 years, Rebecca, she's wanted to watch Jaws. And so like not this year, a couple years ago, we watched Jaws for the first time and she loved it. She absolutely loved it. And
wow.
So and then another one she likes is Jurassic Park, which I'm sure I'm going to be reported to Children's Services because of this podcast. But no,
these are
so much fun.
Yeah, I think that stuff is actually like, that's fine. Because you also, your kid and you know what they can handle and what they like. And like, some kids could handle it. I was scared of E.T. when I was little. Like I couldn't even watch, and that's a kid's movie because I thought he looked gross.
E.T. has my heart. I love E.T. But we would like do it up. We would turn the lights out, pop popcorn. Like we made it like a really fun thing. So it was more than just, we're going to watch a shark bite a guy in half. Like we would laugh about it. And I think the first time I watch it, I would say, hey, there's going to be a part coming up where this person's going to get, like, I would tell her what's going on. So it wasn't like shocking.
No, I think that's great. I love asking like coworkers and people with kids, like how they navigate that stuff. And look, it's better than like 3/4 of what kids are watching on YouTube. Like that's fine.
Yeah. E.T. did not pass the 6-7-year-old test for her. It was too slow, which was interesting.
Oh, wow.
Because it's supposed to be universally like beloved by anyone that's a kid, but it's too slow for her. Too slow for her. I guess not enough people.
E.T. cup right here.
Yeah, no, I love E.T. I wore that VHS out. Yes, it's amazing. Hey, well, Rebecca, so really quick, I know I feel like we could talk way longer, but I just want to get your opinion on SNL after Lorne. We got season 48, 50s we're staring down the barrel of 50 years of SNL, which is incredible. A lot of rumors going around. Lorne's out, that SNL might be out. What do you see the most likely to happen here, SNL after Lorne Michaels at 50?
It's funny. There was a interview with him literally this morning in the New York Times. And the last question is like, they do ask him, do you have any plans on, I could even like read I'm not going to look it up, but he says basically, he's like, I have no plans on leaving anytime soon. They were talking about 50. And even after that, he doesn't seem to have an exit plan at all. He seems to be like, as long as I'm going,
I mean, why not?
I'll keep being on the show. Yeah, I mean, he gets to be like a little king of his domain, Like there are very few people in positions like that where they have so much influence on like an entire genre, basically. But afterwards, I will say my friend interviewed Kate McKinnon a couple months ago on the podcast, Good One, which is a comedy podcast.
Check it out.
And
good one.
He was saying he was so sort of like taken aback by like how passionate she was about SNL, how truly sad she was to leave it, like what it means to her. And she is such an example of someone who like just makes sense on that show and in that space and like has become synonymous with the institution the way that maybe like a Kristen Wiig or someone in the previous cycle or a Tina Fey or whatever has been. So I can see her like becoming a producer, honestly. Like cool. I actually don't know how these things work, and maybe that sounds silly, and it's probably going to be like a nameless, it's probably going to be like producer Lindsay Shookus or whatever. But like, I think if it was going to be like an alumnus, that seems like someone. No, but then again, I don't know if she's cut out, like not me like in a judgmental way, but she seems like a very like introverted, sensitive soul, despite her, brassy characters or whatever. So I don't know if she could handle all the schmoozing and business and making, mean decisions side of it. So I'm trying to think of who is sort of like, I'm like a John Mulaney. Like, could John Mulaney take it over as like a I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Why? What are your thoughts?
well,
Kenan Thompson just stays on forever until he owns NBC.
you
It
know,
could happen.
I think that's a possibility. I think Seth Meyers, I think Tina Fey, some people that are still around. I mean, Steve Higgins, Jimmy Fallon is still in that whole SNL orbit. Names that.
Oh, true.
I mean, Higgins' son is on Please Do Not Destroy, right? I mean, that's
right. This is like a little dynasty now. But you're so right about Seth, I guess, because he has stayed in the like New York. He stayed in New York. He's stayed in late night. And he still has ties to the show. That's probably a really good call out. And he has like producing experience.
Yeah. And I feel like he's been around. So I think he's been around longer than Kenan. I don't know. It'd be really interesting. Seth, Kenan, would be my kind of guess for a successor. I kind of mentioned that it's almost like Succession, right? Like you have like this old, like, I don't know if Lorne's crotchety, but like all these people vying for.
He seems pretty freaking crotchety.
Well, yeah, you have all these people vying for like the spot. You have, I could see Tina Fey doing it. Like, why not? Like, why not Tina? I think that'd be incredible. And so you just have all these players. So just go with me here, Rebecca. If we're looking this SNL post Lorne life, even though he just said he's not looking to stop anytime soon, which I don't blame him. Who would be Greg in this analogy? Who is the Greg in all of the like Lorne is the head of Succession, and who's the Greg in this analogy?
Well, not that he's like in as close enough a seat to the kingdom I hope you say, or the throne or whatever.
I hope you say this.
But
name.
I'm like, I think I'm probably not going to say it. Or it's probably not the same thing, but I think the person who could play Greg in a sketch is Andrew Dismukes. Like he is kind of Greg personality to me. But in terms of like who would be the like, then I'm like, well, Bill Hader's kind of part of the core gang, and he's kind of a lanky dude. I'm thinking in very superficial terms.
I got to get a jab in. So we're looking at these players. If it's like Seth, Tina, Kenan, like all these players, the perfect Greg is Colin Jost.
Oh God.
Like a little younger, thinking that maybe they're a little more than they are. Like it's Colin Jost.
The fail son. He's the fail, or not even the fail son. He's the fail freaking cousin.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. And yes, you're right.
Nothing makes
that Colin thinks he has a chance.
Yes. Yeah.
And then who's Colin's Tom is the real question.
Colin's Tom. Probably Michael Che. I don't know. Just like
yeah, I guess so. He's just the whipping boy.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca, this has been such a delight. Thank you so much for coming on. Vulture, tell us all about what you got coming down at Vulture.
Oh, I feel like I have a couple of exciting profiles of comedians who not comedians you will know, but comedians you do already know that I can't talk about yet. What can I talk about? Vulture Fest is coming up in November. So if you have any listeners in LA or the LA area, that's always really fun. We always get like at least a handful of like really funny comedy people out for that. And that's early November. I'm at Vulture on Twitter, but I don't know. I don't think it's like a worthy. I'm not necessarily like a good tweeter. But yeah, I don't know. Vulture Fest coming up. We have a podcast called Into It with Sam Sanders that I occasionally, not to bring up competition in the entertainment podcast sphere, but occasionally I pop in on that. Yeah. And yeah, that's what's up, I guess.
Well, Rebecca, this is what's up. Thank you so much. I'm going to take a quick break. And when I come back, I'm going to interview Tim Metzler, who actually auditioned for SNL like 4 weeks ago. And he's going to walk us through that entire process. Interviewed him a couple of days ago. Rebecca, thank you so much. Thank you. It was great,
all right,
great talking.
Thanks,
nice
Chase,
to meet you
so much. This was fun. Yep. Thanks.
Want to take a quick break to tell you about our good friends at Sneakerhead Golf Company. Sneakerhead Golf Company turns recycled jerseys into your favorite golf head covers. I'm talking about putter covers, wood covers, driver covers. They do it all. They also sell awesome stickers, accessories, and other apparel I'm sure you'll love. So check out sneakerheadgolf.com to see what they have in stock. Or you can even have your own favorite jersey or hoodie turned into head covers. You're absolutely going to love it. I got myself a red 23 Bulls cover for my 3-wood, and it looks perfect in my bag. You know the phrase, look good, feel good, play good? Well, let me tell you, you're going to look good no matter your game with Sneakerhead Golf Company. Use promo code CHASEPOD15 at checkout for 20% off your entire order. And listen, Christmas is right around the corner. Tell your loved ones that you want a new cover for your driver or your woods or your putter. Head over to sneakerheadgolf.com and send the link to your loved ones today, this holiday season. You can also check them out on Instagram, Sneakerhead Golf Co. They have all their stuff there that looks great. Sneakerhead Golf Company, changing the game one bag at a time. Let's do it, people.
Hello, Brooks here with the Books with Brooks monthly book club podcast. Listen, it is beyond time for you to join a book club. I know you've been thinking about it and everyone's doing it. Here's how Books with Brooks works. We read one book a month and then we talk about it. Classics like Stephen King's The Shining, debut novels like We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang, and tons of other compelling, life-changing stories, one book and 1 month at a time. So come read along with us and then listen in.
We are excited to announce that we are joining the Press Play Podcast Network. The Krypton Report podcast is dedicated to all things Superman, Supergirl, and the planet Krypton. We discuss movies, TV, game, comics, and all things DC.
So join me, Tyler, with my co-host James and Jania.
So join us as we explore DC's multiverse.
Look for Krypton Report on all social media platforms.
Hey everyone, this is Don Mike Mendoza, the host of Producing While Asian. Join us in Season 2 for more conversations with actors, artists, producers, and more from Broadway, Hollywood, and beyond, every other Wednesday on the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, it's JD from the Hyman Podcast. Backed by popular demand, I'm excited to let you know that new episodes of the Hyman Podcast will drop every other Monday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We're going to continue the conversations we started last season and keep having those hard conversations. There is so much in store for you this season, and I'm excited to share it with you. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single moment. The Hyman Podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Okay, I'm here with Tim Metzler, a Chicago-based comedian. He's a writer. He's a podcast host. And Tim last month auditioned for SNL, and he's here to talk to us about it. Tim, thanks for joining the pod, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, Chase. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
So our circles have been congruent. Our orbits have passed each other from a distance for quite a while. I first saw you in one of my good friends' show, Brooks May. Well, now she's not.
Yes.
She had casted you in a show called The Wizard of Flaws. And
that's right.
I've grown. Brooks and I started at Second City together. We started in the writing program together, and there was like that whole girl group that wrote that show. We went
bosom friends, the bosom
friends. Yeah. They're just brilliant, funny, awesome people. As we submitted our sketches for Writing 5, I was the only one in the group that didn't get in. And so we went to their show, and that's how I met you. So it's nice to finally kind of, cross the streams here a little bit, Tim. I appreciate it.
The convergence has happened.
It has. And
this
then
is
we
great.
got to know Jake. And then I cast Brooks in my show. Once I finally got in. And it's been great. So, dude, congrats on getting an audition for SNL. I don't know. How you feeling? How you feeling?
Really, really excellent. This is going to be a really exciting season coming up. I will not be a part of it, but to have gone through the process of auditioning for SNL, I've been doing sketch and improv comedy for over a decade, and to be part of a community that continuously impresses me, and to be able to be one of the people who got very far this year is, I just feel incredibly proud and happy of that. And for me to be able to do it, I feel like great. I understand now what I need to do to try and return to that level. So
I want to dive more into like who contacted who, what, like I want to get in there, but I feel like Tim, because everyone in Chicago kind of has a SNL story, whether they were in the lobby of a bar and someone walked in, or they're in a bathroom, or someone was behind. Like, I feel like if you're around Second City or IO or anywhere enough, you're going to have some brush with someone from SNL. When I was at IO, it was Lorne or Seth is downstairs, and it was just like there was a buzz in the theaters. What are some of your, before this summer, Tim, what were some of your SNL buzzes or experiences before this summer?
Man, I definitely, being around Second City, you're right. It's just a hive where you can be walking down the hall and you're like, what, is that Martin Short? And it's crazy. The closest I've really ever come to anybody, though, and I think honestly, I'm so inattentive. Sometimes people will be like, "Oh, you just like walked past like some producer of some show or something," and they're like, "I don't know that." Yeah. But there was one time after a show, I think it was around the time that the Wizard of Flaws was happening. This would have been, I think, about 2015,
right after the fire.
Yes. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. I went to Old Town Ale House, and there are like two guys who are notorious for being there, and one of them I've never run into. It's Michael Shannon. He's obviously not SNL, but he's like he's this actor. And you're like, my God, is that Michael Shannon? Yeah. And then the one guy who truly is, he was an SNL writer. His story is very interesting. It's Bob Odenkirk. Yeah. And I remember I walked in one time and I was looking for my friends who said they were going to be there. And I like peered around, and the way it works is when you walk into this bar, it's instantly cramped. There are going to be two people in there and it feels claustrophobic. Mm-hmm. And you go in and it's pretty historic. But if you turn to your right or your left, there's these like two booths. And I turned to my left, and they're literally like 2 inches from my face. Bob Odenkirk was like looking at somebody else. And I just looked dead in his eyes, and he went, "No." Oh my gosh. I was like, oh, okay. Didn't even recognize it was Bob Odenkirk until I was like, "Oh, sorry, sir. Yeah. Terribly sorry." And so that was one of those moments. I was like, "Okay, cool." Mm. I
had class with Michael McCarthy at IO, in his in one of his writing classes.
Great guy.
I had a friend named Sean, who came up, and he was like just like shook. We're like, "Dude, Sean, what's up?" He's like, "Dude, I was just in the bathroom and Lorne Michaels walked in and started peeing right beside me." And he was like, so like out, like, yeah, it was, but we all laughed. And then Michael had some snarky comment. And then the next week, I think just to flex, I think after that, he didn't do this with our class, but the class before ours, he just like FaceTime Stephen Colbert just in the middle of his class, just like a massive flex. But so he showed us a screenshot. But it was always fun. It is just, if you're a fan of sketch comedy, or SNL or any of the just other comedically genius shows, whether it's like Daily Show, like any of those, like that's the energy, the history, the pictures. It is just, there's nothing like comedy in Chicago. I miss it. Did you grow up in Chicago, Tim?
No, I grew up in Western Wisconsin in a called the Coulee region. So a coulee is basically this like large basin with bluffs on the outside. So it's naturally like gorgeous, but it's Wisconsin, like a lot of cows, a lot of old Targets, like not updated Target buildings. Mm-hmm. And I moved to, I went to a university in my hometown called Viterbo University. And I went there because I got, a lot of scholarship money. I was local, got to be close to my parents.
Can't let this Tim guy out of here. He's got to stay in Wisconsin. This Tim guy, we got to keep him close. He's too good.
Someone's got to eat all this cheese.
Well, that and spotted cow. I'm a little jealous of spotted cow.
Every time I go back, I come back with objectively too much spotted cow.
I don't know if that's a thing.
It is. It really is. Okay. It's such a good. It's such a good beer. It really is. It hits different.
It does.
Well, anyway, I went to a university around there, and then I was going to do a master's in creative writing, and I ended up having heart surgery at the end of my time at Viterbo. And
Oh my gosh.
I was, it was like one of those come to terms with your mortality moment. And I decided I'm going to go do comedy instead of a real job. So,
well, it served
Yeah.
you well. Chicago, did you do? So for those of people who don't know, there's a lot of different comedy theaters in Chicago.
Yeah.
And I'm no one to be lecturing anyone in what this is, but the most popular one, Second City, that, and then I don't think IO is a theater anymore. Is it?
It is on the verge of coming back. So it was bought by a new group. I know a few people who are part of it now, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a different theater than it was before. I think the culture is already, very different. It's going to take a bit for them to get back to even a remote semblance of what it was. Sure. But we're talking pre-pandemic. There is no comparison that if you want to learn how to do live comedy, sketch comedy, 100%, you have to move to Chicago and do it. Yeah. Now, the experience I had. So do you want me to break down kind of what happened with everything related to this SNL audition and stuff? Like,
yes.
I
So
think people
we'll get out of
know what
SNL
that process
weeds,
is.
The comedy theater weeds. But so okay. Yeah. So
So my background, and I think a lot of people who end up getting to the SNL point have a very similar experience. You do stuff at all the theaters, Second City, IO, Annoyance. Yeah. And they're great. And they all give you the opportunity to do different things.
Very
and
different styles, very different theories, very different.
Yeah. I mean, I do late shows at Annoyance, and I'll try out the characters that I can't do at Second City. And then I'll take the characters and I'll put them over at Second City and start testing them for, the palatable audience, and sort of tweak them and change them. And you have to do that process. I think you have to take all of what the city offers. And that's what that's what makes Chicago really special. Yeah. But I've been doing this for 10 years. I've done, ship contracts. I tour with Second City. I've done house teams at IO, Herald teams, stuff at Annoyance, all this stuff. I learned how to do all this stuff. I've had my own original groups, and we do things, and you really have such an easy time doing it in Chicago. I've always believed you can create anything you want in Chicago, and you can afford it. And if you go to LA, you can create nothing that you want and you can't afford it. Yeah. And if you go to New York, you really are stuck with the venues that are there, and you can't create your own stuff, but you can try and do stand up basically. Mm-hmm. So my experience was over the last few years through my agent, Panessa, I've been able to submit material, and it's been pre-recorded. So I sent in 5 minutes, and it's exactly 5 minutes or less. They don't want any more. And I'll also submit writing packets, things like that too. A lot of these things are open to everybody, but to get it pushed through, or to the point where people are looking at it, you really need to have some sort of representation, either a manager or an agent who's got some connection. Now, in previous years, I've not gotten anywhere with those. I think it's a little more rare because you do get more submissions when you're SNL. But this year, Chicago finally returned to what they do, which is having live showcases. And I know Annoyance last year was one of the groups that was able to do a live showcase, and SNL sent some people out to come watch. And nobody got anything out of it, but it was great to see. And then this year, IO and Annoyance collaborated together, and they had 2 nights of showcases where there's a total of about 24, 25 Chicago comedians that did their Type 5. To do that, you had to get your name pushed along far enough to be able to audition to do the showcase.
Okay. So at these showcases, all these 25 comedians, they all get 5 minutes.
Yes. So that's what it is. And you're timed hey, you got to keep it real short, especially because there's an audition to get the showcase. Nobody's just given the showcase unless you're like a TikTok star out in New York or in LA.
Wait, okay. So you have to audition for this Chicago showcase.
Yeah. So you audition, and it's just a room, a large theater room with the producers who are picking people to represent their theater. So the people from IO who are putting it together, and the people from Annoyance who were putting their showcase together, they were all there, and they were saying, who do we want to move on, that sort of thing. And so then they handpick their people from these, 60 to 100 people.
So this isn't SNL yet. This is still Chicago people.
This is, yeah. And the people, the thing is also nobody was getting this ability to audition who hadn't already proven themselves and been around for a long time. Gotcha. So it's not like, oh, somebody just showed up and did this. No, these are people who've been here 5 to 10 years or longer who have done this before. Yeah. We're picking now we're picking the content we want. We're picking the lineup we want to represent us. Because you want to have the best material, but you also don't want a lineup that's just like, here's 12 white guys. That'd be absurd. Yeah. You're picking like the best talent, and you also want to represent what is my theater and what are we trying to promote here too. Right. And the lineup was fantastic for both nights here in Chicago. There was so many fantastic, wonderful, extremely talented people who did it. And then SNL sent a group of writers who came. It was different pairings each night, who came to different showcase nights.
Please don't destroy. Were they there?
I did not see them. I did not. I believe I saw Allison Gates, who is a Second City alum. Mm-hmm. She's great.
Yeah, she's been on the show for a minute.
I want to say at least on the same time Luke Null.
Yeah.
2018, somewhat 2018, 2019. Yeah. So what they did is they picked the people that they really liked. And I believe that what they did is they took the tape of that and showed it to the rest of the people and say, okay, do we want to take another look at them? Or either that, or they're like, these are the ones that we want to see again. So they took me, a couple other guys, and a couple women, and they split us up over the final showcases. So now these are the final SNL showcases.
Okay. And is it still in Chicago?
No. So nothing happens in Chicago anymore. Chicago's done with the process.
So you get a rose. You get to go to the next round.
You get to go to the next round.
Okay.
And this is the one where they fly you out and they kind of pamper you a bit. So
So put us in your headspace, Tim. So you like 10 years, you're working hard, you're working on these characters, you get through the Chicago preliminary audition, you do your showcase. Someone on the show is watching you. Is it still an empty theater, or is it like live? The Chicago showcase.
This one they sell tickets to.
Okay.
And
so the good energy in the room.
It might have even been like a free ticket link where they're just like loaded up, bringing in everybody.
A lot of energy, a lot of fun.
You
feel great about how you did. And then how do they contact you? Like, does it go through your agent?
Yeah. And it's a long time. So you do it and you wait like a couple weeks. Ugh. And maybe you hear like, oh, they liked you. And that's it. And you're like, oh, okay.
Hard to get.
Sure. Someone came up to me at a Perkins one time and said they liked me, and I had to leave right away. So I can't, okay, great. I'm glad they like me. But from talking with some other people who did it, who I was like, I know you did a really good job. I also was able to watch one of the showcases the one I was not in, and kind of look at the writers and see who they were laughing at. And you can sort of tell like, oh, that really crushed, or they had a bit that is just, or 2 or 3 bits that like, that was really good.
Yeah.
And I think there's a difference too, because there were some people who were very funny, but some of the stuff they did, I think I had a hard time stretching my imagination to be like, do I see this like on the show though? Like this is really aggressive. There's too many, F-bombs in there. Like, I don't think that and I think that was what made it funny. So like, I don't know if I see that being something they do. So that it's really this crazy juggling act where you're like, let me create like G-rated comedy for people who are looking for R-rated comedy for a PG-13 show. Like,
but it's got to be smart. It's got to be edgy, but not too edgy. It's got to check all these weird boxes.
And what you're trying to do is you're also trying to take all your material and say, okay, cool. I'm trying to represent what I could play too. So I'm not even really concerned all the time about like, what is purely my funniest thing? Because a lot of my funny things are very similar, but also like, okay, I want to get some satire. I want to do some music. I want to do, okay, I need one thing that's close to me. I need something that's really far away. Okay. And you're like trying to, it's like that math equation in your brain, and you can see it and you're like, oh my God. I think
I am enthralled right now. I'm so wherever you're at, this is fascinating.
It's wild. It's a wild, very specific thing. And here's the crazy thing in my mind is there's no use for these characters beyond this showcase. None. If you go to see an SNL showcase ever, you see character people, because a lot of them nowadays are just stand-ups. SNL really likes hiring stand-ups.
A lot of the new hires are
all of them. Like I think they delve into character stuff, but they're all specifically stand-ups, which is very important to note. But in Chicago, we do characters really well.
Yeah,
stand-up is like the unwanted child in Chicago.
New York. Yeah, maybe a little LA, but Chicago, you don't go there for the stand-up scene.
Yes, exactly. But also you go for like improv and sketch within groups, or even comedy music. And seeing a person go up and have like a one-sided conversation with like Ron DeSantis or something, you're like, okay, cool. This is what you do? Yeah. No. It's a very specific packaging of ideas. It's very niche in this like character art form. It is fascinating.
So I have a question. Yeah. So before we get to how they flew you out, are the showcases in New York and LA? Do you know if they're the same style?
So this is I can go into this. So let me take you down my experience, and I can give you all the hot deets of what I felt through all this.
Okay, sorry. So I just want to. Okay, yeah. So all right, yeah, go ahead.
So I eventually got the call from my agent saying they like you, they want to fly you out, and this was like the start of August. And
okay, so not like, too long ago.
Well, she was like, I'm not sure when they're going to fly you out. We'll figure it out. And they don't give you any information other than we're going to fly you out. And so then there were other people who I sort of was able to communicate with them like, hey, did you hear anything? Did you not hear anything? And we were able to figure out who was moving on from Chicago. Very, very normally, in like a normal year, a showcase from Chicago will yield maybe 1 or 2 people who get flown out. Like, it's not much. And also SNL comes to Second City and they watches their resident shows. Yeah. So this is 12 additional actors who are kind of giving this, like, we're pushing you pretty far through. And if we see some potential there and we want to see your solo characters, we'll fly you out as well. Now, I know they flew out, I think, a total of 6, 3 women, 3 men, including myself. The 3 men were flown to New York at the very end of August. And we were all put up at the same hotel. We hung out. It was this hotel right across from Radio City Music Hall. The little neon lights were like blasting through our windows. We're literally standing in the shadows of these things. 30 Rock is right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's extremely intimidating because okay, I'll get into a sec, but I know a lot of the women were sent out to LA. So they did like an LA showcase and they did 2 New York showcases. So this is pared down from other places. So they went to LA, they went to New York, they pared some people down, or they asked different theaters, give us your best. And then this is the final showcase. So I know LA happened. I don't know much about what occurred out there. Yeah. I believe Molly Kearney and Michael Longfellow, I think they were out there and did that showcase. They are 2 new cast members. Now in New York, they had 1 showcase day on like a Friday it was like a Monday, and we were on a Tuesday. It was crazy. It was truly crazy. And they were supposed to both be at the Improv Asylum, but something happened where somebody wanted a different time for both like showcases, and they had already scheduled a show at the Improv Asylum on like the second night. And I think it was like called Titanic the Musical or something like that. So we got bumped from this like singular venue for Titanic the musical, and I haven't seen it, but someday I really want to.
Yeah,
because the poster looked great for it. So one showcase was at the Improv Asylum, and the second showcase, which the three guys from Chicago, myself included, we did it at the Comic Strip Live, which is this like historic stand-up theater.
Yeah.
The stage is tiny. It's like small.
The venue's tiny, right? Like it's a small place.
Yeah, it kind of is. And it is not designed for characters. It's actually not designed for talking. It's designed for, do you have a microphone? Okay, awesome. This is like, it's literally perfection for stand-up. Like if I were ever to do stand-up on the highest level, I'd be like, yeah, I would want to do it there. Yeah. But the difference between these two venues was so drastic, because at the Improv Asylum, they had lights, and like the tech person was like doing music drops and stuff, and they had people reaching through the curtain to hand them like props, and it was like, oh, this is awesome. And I think we saw like 15 people. We saw Marcelo, I forget his last name, but Marcelo, and we saw him do his stand-up set. He's also a new cast member. And in the group, when we were watching, it was him, and then there was another person. His name was Jen, who I think they moved on to on-camera stuff. And those two, we were like, these are our favorite picks. So you really can kind of tell. I will say, and I'm not trying to slam anybody who was part of that showcase, but solo and sketch characters are very, very different in New York as opposed to Chicago. Like we went and we're like, we're curious what the timing is. And a lot of the people who were part of that showcase were literally like TikTok stars. They had like viral videos. They were people who were like the asylums, like their people, you know, and like, so it's very clear that this showcase was like we're pushing through. But then there were other people who were like writers for the late night shows and things like that. And they were doing it. Keep in mind, you're told the whole time, 5 minutes. You do 5 minutes. Laughter can extend it to like 6 minutes. If there's transitions and stuff like that between your characters that are planned with the theater, fine, a little bit longer, but like keep it close to 5.
Tight 5, yeah.
Tight 5. And there were people who we timed who would do a singular impression for 7 minutes. Ooh. And then they would do 5 more characters. There were people who went for 15 minutes. And we're like, this is insane. Yeah. Like, this is totally nuts. And again, not trying to knock them, but it was very clear for a lot of them that they were not really sketch people. They had not refined it the same way that a lot of Chicago people are able to.
Which, if I remember, sorry, dude, I'd hate to interrupt. Sorry, man. But if I remember from my time, I felt like that was Second City alum always had a reputation of being concise. They always were able to send their sketch packets the right format. Like there's like a reputation that, oh, you're from Chicago Second City, you're going to be able to do it right, turn it in right, write it correctly. Like, and so it's like this kind of, I feel like fits a mold that, you know, goes before Second City.
100%. Chicago really has adopted that of like, we are professionals and we do it the right way.
Right.
And I think in some ways that might be to our detriment as performers, you know, on some of these higher levels. However, I know a lot of the people who went very long, I don't believe they moved on. And we even got like an email the next day, like, reminder, keep it at 5 minutes. And we're like, oh, okay. They picked up on that. Yeah. There was something else too. This is a really interesting thought. I don't know if as anybody's going to hear this and be like, oh, wow. But there's a comedian. His name is John Early, I believe. Okay. Have you ever seen I Think You Should Leave?
Yes.
So there's in season 2, he's the guy in the scene where it's like hey, let's do credit card roulette. And he's like no, I'm not going to pay. I'm not going to pay.
Okay.
And he's done a number of things. And if you watch his style of comedy, it's very New York matches him. It's like, I'm an actor. Okay,
so
I'm going to think you should leave
Tim Robinson, Netflix.
Well, here's the thing. Chicago does Tim Robinson, which is this like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And New York is very like, this is an actor doing, I don't know, an audition. It's like the difference between almost like if you go to England and you're like, this is like Cockney and this is like RP.
Yeah.
The difference is in the styles is Chicago is willing to be this like grungy, nasty thing. And New York is like, and I wish
the
characters,
people could
all
see
of the characters.
your just like face change as you put on this New York persona. It's pretty delightful.
Just lift your eyebrows through your forehead all the way to the top. And then it was crazy. But we noticed it about all of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, then our showcase happens. It's the next night. It's at this. It's at the Comic Strip Live. Now the thing for me that I think will always be fascinating to me is this venue has no green room. There's no backstage for actors to hang out. So we were all in the lobby the whole time waiting for our chance to burst through the door. Like literally, okay, run past the tech door, run, like zoom on stage. And to get on stage, you also have to kind of run through the audience. And the like sort of circumstantial hilarity is that all of us had like a stupid number of props. Like literally I have a character where it's Ted Cruz using a tampon so he can appeal to women. And I have this huge box of tampons. I'm like running through the audience, just like a crate of tampons. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is
in my brain. They were like falling out, like disheveled, like
for sure,
like falling in people's Coke, like bobbing up and down. Like
I'm like, excuse me, there's a tampon in my drink. But the great part about it is that we literally had to mingle with all of these other comedians who, you know, they're like awesome. They were awesome. And everyone was super nice and very, very obviously so nervous. We all wanted to vomit. Like I've never really been around a group, except for like at the end of a football practice where you have to like run a bunch.
Yeah.
I've never been around a group of people that has wanted to vomit more than that group. Like we all were like, I'm going to pop. I am going to vomit.
So at this club, who from SNL is here at this club?
So we're just hanging out in the like opening. Oh my God. So we're just hanging out in the lobby of Comic Strip Live. And I was just talking to one of the other guys and all of a sudden he's like, oh no way. There's Colin Jost. And Colin Jost walks in, jeans, just a shirt, not shaved, just like a guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that's Colin Jost. And he's just there, kind of talks to the guy at the ticket counter. And he's like, all right. And then like hangs out for a second. And the writers all come in together. They sort of gather outside the theater beforehand. And then they like like everybody's seated before they go in. And Lorne Michaels shows up too. And I mean, I've never had like an opinion change on someone so fast. Like he's a human being.
Yeah.
And you never view him as a human being. Like he wears a Yankees hat. He's got jeans on. I'm pretty sure he wore like New Balance shoes. And I was just like, that's just like someone's dad showing up to be like, let me decide what comedy is going to be for the next 10 years.
Right.
You know, like, he's just kind of there. He's just there. And you're like, oh, I don't even know how to like handle this moment. And you just sort of like witness this occurrence of like, oh yeah, he's just like walked by. But I think the moment I saw him and I saw Jost and I saw a number of like producers and writers walking, I was like, oh, this has changed for me. I see that they're people now. And for me, my like anxiety went so far the other way. I like got tired.
Really? Oh, yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I feel like I'd probably lose it if like I was like, holy crap, I'm about to go on stage in 17 minutes and like there's Lorne Michaels and there's the head writer and there's like I would probably lose a pin and probably bomb and fail and like kick myself like the moment I got off stage, just like, oh man.
Well, the crazy thing is like they all seemed very nice and they were kind of like cordial. And nobody came up and was like, hello, I'm so and so from SNL, or like none of that. That's not what they you know, there's this separation, but they're just very nice and like happy to be there. And I think it changes when you're there, you realize like, oh, they do want to see me be good. Like they don't want to, this is not like a judgment where I'm like the Hunger Games where I have to perform or I'm going to die. It's kind of like, they want to see you succeed, I think, ultimately. And I felt great. Like I went very early in the lineup, and I got to get it out of the way. And then I was just chilling for like over an hour waiting for all these people to be done.
Yeah.
And, it was awesome. It was really cool.
Man.
And I felt really good about it. The other two guys I was with from Chicago, we all were like, we're great. Like we feel really confident, especially because we'd seen the showcase the night before and the email had come through of like, keep it under 15 or keep it under 5 for this one. And we're like, okay, I think we have a real shot at this. And then nobody from Chicago, at least that I know of, was moved on to the next round, which is the final round. It's the on-camera round. Now I know people. 8H. I know. Yes. Now I was prepared for this because I talked to a number of people who have gotten to that round at 8H, and the way it works, just so if you're interested in what the process is. Now I did not get to this point, but this is how it goes from there. If they like you in this next showcase, you go to 8H, you hang out in one of the dressing rooms, like 80 Bryant's dressing room, and you're just in there for hours, and they tell you you're going to be up soon, and then it's hours. Like the goal is to make you boil. That's the whole point of it. And then they bring you through the backstage area, through all the little tunnels and stuff, and you go out onto the main monologue stage. And there's going to be a camera that's on you, and right just off stage is where all the writers, producers, Lorne, people like that, they're going to sit there and watch you. Again, this is what I've been told. And the goal there too is just to bamboozle you. Like the lights will change, and there'll be different like distracting things. A camera might move, and you just do your thing to the camera, and then you leave. Maybe they laugh, maybe they don't. But if you go back and you look at like previous SNL auditions, like Jason Sudeikis's or people like that, that's what that is. That they made it to the on-camera.
And that's what you see, the grainy footage of just like awkward silence doing a character. But what I've heard, Tim, is at that point, they just want to see if you're someone that can run into the hallway at 1 a.m. with 3 sketches due like in 5 hours. Like at that point, they're just like probably making you wait longer than they need to, and doing all that high pressure stuff just to see if Tim, the person, is someone who can handle like these really weird hours, who is enjoyable whenever, like, that's just like raw Tim Metzler. Is this someone that we want to spend a lot of time with? And I'm sure they've been able to iron out that process for 48 years, right? Like
I think they also do like interviews and stuff, and they really try and hash out, you're right. Who is the person? And absolutely, like they do want to know, will we go to battle with this person, or are they going to, shy away from taking the shot when we need them to? Man, that's it. That's the process. That's what happened. And for a lot of people, in recent history, they take stand-ups. They have not been going for comedic solo sketch actors very much. A lot of people that do move on, they also, even if they are sketch people, they do have a lot of stand-up experience. And it just kind of changes. Like everybody kind of has a different experience to get there, but and a lot of them, they get flown out multiple times. I know Alex Moffat flew out like 3 times. Chris Redd, like, they literally
both rest in peace, right?
Yeah, like you have it, man. Like you made it, the show, and then like, no, you didn't. People who,
because you didn't get to 8H.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I hear a lot of people who gets the 8H, they get called back more frequently for another, or like, because you've gone this far, is it more likely that you'll be able to go this far again?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think it depends on a number of things. First off, season 50 is fast approaching. This is going to be season 48 this year. So Lorne Michaels is going to be 80 years old, or very close to, by the time season 50 happens. The whole time I was there, when I was talking to people, they were like, yeah, we're auditioning, but we're auditioning for maybe 3 years, maybe more at the most. And like that's the chatter right now, is like, this institution, And it's horrifying to even think about because, like, no, you can't end SNL.
I love the show.
Yeah.
I love it. I've always loved it. I've loved every iteration of it. It makes me, I get upset when people like, oh, it's not funny anymore. I just absolutely everything about it, from set, from props to costumes to the changes they do to I love everything about it. I love introducing and seeing new talent. I just love watching them grow. Every cast is different. Every cycle is different, but that's what makes, there's nothing like it on TV. Maybe South Park, maybe, but not like even, it's just, it's so different.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And Tim, I've just loved every moment that you've shared. Thank you. Congratulations. Cause I mean, what you've done, people just like dream of, just to have those experiences and encounters. And I do hope that you get another shot. I do hope that maybe it's a writing, maybe it's just something that you just continue to kind of pursue this, man. Cause I think that's incredible.
Well, thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. But you know, the other thing is when you're in Chicago, the way out of Chicago is like SNL, but there are so many new things that are constantly coming up. Late night shows, really the cartoon realm is growing so much with streaming and everything like that. I think we need to brace ourselves for the likelihood that we might run out of, we might have an overabundance of opportunities coming up. I hope so. I hope that for sure. And I hope that shows start coming to Chicago more to dip into the talent, because having seen New York and having talked to people who flew out to LA, I know that Chicago has a far superior crop of sketch creators. It's not close. There is no comparison.
I believe it. I love Chicago. I think everyone that we've watched and supported were just brilliant. And you're one of those people, Tim. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. That was incredible. I hope people enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And that does it for this mega SNL episode preview of the Chase Smith podcast. Thank you all so much for downloading and listening. Shouts to our sponsor, Sneakerhead Golf Company. Don't forget to use code ChasePod15 at checkout for a discount. Check that out. Shouts to the Press Play Podcast Network for making this possible. Follow us online at Press Play Pods. Visit our website at PressPlayPodcast.com to keep up with all of our shows, network news, and sponsorship information. If you enjoyed today's episode, leave a review. Appreciate it. 5-star rating would be awesome as well. Tim, plug something, man. I know you got a lot going on. You got a fancy football show. Like, tell us everything that you do. I'd love to hear it.
Well, you know what? Here's what I'll say. If you wanna just get content, absolutely content galore. I do a lot of fantasy football stuff, a lot of comedy stuff, a lot of music comedy stuff. Just go Google at Timmy_the_Mets, at Timmy the Mets, and you'll find all of my stuff. Hit me up on social media, send me a message. I'd love to talk and tell you more about my experiences.
We'll put your Twitter handle and Google search in the show notes so people can just no, Tim, right. I appreciate it, man. Hey, you have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, man. You have a good one. Appreciate you.